need to confess something. I did something a couple of days ago. One morning, I took my 50mm, strapped to my camera, and I didn't bring my Tamron lens, or, Thomas Tamron lens, actually. And for you that don't know what I'm talking about the Tamron 28 to 75mm f2.8. That's my workhorse. That's my comfort lens, my safety net. So I didn't bring it. I only had the 50mm strapped to my camera. I had nothing in the bag because I wanted to challenge myself. And the result was interesting. So last time I made a video on this topic, I said that zoom lenses were better for beginners than prime lenses. And why is that? Because variety, it's everything. When you don't know what you like, when you are a beginner like me, you don't know what you like. And if you're curious, you can always check that video out. I'm not gonna, dive into that debate once again. I've already done that, so I don't need to do that. So I'm gonna leave a link somewhere if I'm able to do that. I'm gonna leave a link to that video, so be sure to check that out. And I do get it, I do. I get the hype around prime lenses, and I get all the arguments why you should use a prime lens instead of a zoom lens. I really do. It forces you to think differently, and you can't just stand there and hope for a happy accident. You can't lazily twist a zoom ring until to something feels right. You got to move, and you got to frame, and you got to care a lot more about composition. And unless you're rocking a monster sensor with 100 megapixels, like some of the Hasselblad's cameras I see a lot on social medias, or like this Sony A7R series, you can't just crop your way out of a bad frame, a bad composition. You're stuck with the frame you choose. And the good thing is you have to care a lot more about the composition that you choose. And that could be very uncomfortable and very challenging, but that's exactly the point. Because I think that without that discomfort and without the limitation, without that challenge, there is no growth. And that's what I wanted for me. So I wanted to challenge myself. And the result was, well, interesting. So let me show you some of the photos that I got from this challenge. Some of them I'm proud of, I really am. Some of them not so much. And that's important because not every photo is supposed to be a banger. Photography isn't Instagram highlight reels. It's trial, it's error, and sometimes straight up failure. But if even one of these shots makes me smile, that's a win. And that's what really matters, isn't it? It doesn't matter what everyone else thinks, right? Now, let's talk about the lens itself. This little 50mm f1.8 from Sony. It's cheap, but not, bad cheap. Just compared to a lot of lenses out there, this one is really, really affordable. The images are sharp and the bokeh is smooth. That f1.8 bokeh, it's really, really smooth. So it's fantastic value. It's good for portrait, and I do believe that you can rock this at, street photography as well. But there are some quirks. The autofocus is not that fast as the Tamron is. And sometimes it hunts, and sometimes I feel that it doesn't really, really land. And I almost all the time use autofocus. Manual focus, that's a whole other conversation. And maybe even another video. I need to write that down so I don't forget to make a video about that. But for the price, it's a killer piece of glass, no question about it. So, have you used this lens, the Sony 50mm f1.8? Did you love it? Or did you hate it? I'm really curious actually, so please leave a comment in the, the box below what you think of this lens. I do believe that when I come home, like right now, I will change to the Tamron again. A confession, I already did. I'm filming with the Tamron again. And why is that? Because versatility wins when you're shooting all sorts of things. And I don't have to change lenses all the time. I don't own another prime lens, so that means I'm stuck with this 50mm. But then again, I don't know. I really like this little thing. Prime lenses have real power. They don't just capture images, they change the way you see. And I know that sounds very cliche, but I do believe it's true. And that shift, that's what helps us grow as photographers. And photography aside, there is something special about to care more. You get to be more in the moment. And that also sounds very cliche, but I do believe it's true. You have to care more, and therefore you are more in the moment. You forces yourself to be more in the moment. But that is something that I will talk about in another video. And one other thing I realized is how personal focal length is. Because a lot of people are saying that like 35mm is classic street photography. And I actually struggle with focal lengths like 35mm. It's harder, I do believe that it's harder not to get a messy picture. And I believe it's harder to get a good picture with wider lenses overall. But 50mm and beyond, it pulls me in and it compresses the scene and just enough so that I feel closer. And it feels personal. And it feels easier to get a good picture with a more compressed focal length. But maybe that is exactly what I need. To get a 35 prime lens, to challenge myself. Maybe I'll even buy one of those and forces myself to use it. There we go. Sorry, honey. That new couch that we discussed, we have to wait for that. Photography aside, gear, it's great. And reviews are fun. Specs are really interesting. But none of it matters if we don't push ourselves past what's comfortable. And that's what I learned leaving my Tamron at home. And that's what I learned carrying just one lens. And that's what I'll probably keep learning again and again every time I strip things back to the basic. And that's another thing that sounds cliche, I know, but it's true. So here's to bad photos, here's to missed focus, and here's to walking an extra steps forward or backwards because you can't zoom. And here's to see the world in 50mm. Yeah. Oh.